Alright, hello everyone, Luke here, and I'm about to show you how to properly tune an Aston Martin DBR9 GT1 2010. But before I get into that, I do have to confess that I am back in the swivel chair here. I know last video I told you guys that I was going to be in the Next Level Racing FGT cockpit, and unfortunately what's going on with that is that I'm having surgery very soon, so I'm not really in the best physical condition to be doing that. It just won't be safe for me to be assembling it and moving it around myself. And so I've had to rely on the help of my brother and my father to be helping me put that together and just getting it right for me. And unfortunately, I'm having a lot of difficulty with that. So that's why I'm, for now, just back in the swivel chair. I'm really hoping that we can get that just right and that I'm not going to have to return it, because that'll just be a major bummer, guys. Really hoping I can be in that cockpit. So that's what's going on with that, and that's why I'm back in the swivel chair. But onto the tuning for the Aston Martin here. This is the car that most people are choosing for the next round, round 2 of the Road to GT7 series. So that is why I'm going to show you guys how to tune it, because almost everyone's picking this car for the next round in the championship this Saturday, actually, right around the corner. So this is a track where I feel like I can really benefit from overall loosening it up and giving it more of an oversteer feel to it. So I made the ride height in the front 236 and in the rear 307. So that makes the balance a little bit higher in the front than it is, especially from the default tune. So when you do that, it's going to give it just a little less of a tight feel overall. But what really makes a difference in loosening it up is the natural frequency. I've lowered that a lot. I've made the front 266 and the rear 261. This car is stable enough as it is that you really don't need very stiff suspension. It's very, very stable. Even when you make the springs that light and that loose, it's still going to be very stable. You'd be surprised. So you're not losing much, you're not sacrificing much from making the suspension that loose on this car, because it stays stable. The only thing you're getting is a benefit, because you're going to be able to turn a lot sharper without coming off throttle, because you get a lot of understeer if you make it much stiffer than that. So the roll bars, same deal here. I'm trying to make the roll bars, in the Ford GT40 in the other video I made of tuning, I think I made them, I could be wrong on this, but I think I made them 9 each. And on this one, I'm favoring oversteer, so I made the rear just 1 notch tighter, with it being 6 in the front, 7 in the rear. The reason it's just 1 notch tighter in the rear is, again, I'm trying to make it sway a little bit more in the oversteer direction rather than understeer. So, and that's especially beneficial in a front engine car like this one. Front engine cars can benefit from having a little bit more oversteer. So, yep, that's what I did with the sway bars. It's 6 in the front, 7 in the rear. Now, the damping and the compression and rebound ratio, this I have set just a little bit higher than what it was, because the final chicane of this track, you do have to make your tires go over those rumble strips to cut it tight enough. And so the shock that's going to send through the suspension of going through the rumble strips, you want to have the confidence in knowing that it can handle that shock without losing control. So that's why I have it at 58 and 88 in the front, and then 57 and 87 in the rear for the compression and rebound. So that's going to benefit you in it not shocking the suspension too much when you go over the curbs on this track, okay? So negative camber angle. I've made this even on both tires, because the one turn you do before you turn into the chicane, if you know what I'm talking about, I probably didn't describe that well enough, but there's this one turn where they have the meter markers on the right and you take a sharp turn to the left, and that turn, if you have the camber angles uneven, it's going to kind of, like, when you turn, it kind of fishtails a little bit, because you just take such a jerk of the wheel on that turn that you have to have your camber even for that turn for it to not fishtail. And so I put that at 2.1 on both the front and the rear. I feel like the default camber on this is way too high for the speed that you're going to be going on this track and in this vehicle. I feel like the kind of camber they had set up, maybe it would be better for a car that's much faster, but this kind of speed, it's excessive amounts of camber. So you can lower the camber, and this is still pretty high, and this is still going to be a really good balance where you're going to have the right amount of grip in a straight line and while cornering, and you don't want to offset this on this track, because the kind of like you jerk the wheel really hard to the left when you make that one turn I just described, and if you don't have it even on both of them, it's going to fishtail just a little bit. So that's why I have it at 2.1 on both the front and the rear, okay? And if you don't believe me, experiment and try it, and then thank me later, okay? So for the toe angle, this is where I feel like I had a huge benefit from this guy. So first of all, I have it in out at 0.05 in the front and in and 0.75 in the rear. Now the rear toe angle, the reason I have it so high is because the hairpin in this track is such a tight hairpin that when you're in first gear, you have to be in first gear exiting that, by the way. So when you're in first gear exiting that hairpin, your car will oversteer too much and lose control on the exit, and you want to be able to have the confidence to just punch it really hard in first gear while you still have a slight angle exiting that hairpin, because it's very tricky on the exit of that hairpin. I mean, anyone who's driven on Suzuka just knows that. So that's why I have the rear toe angle so high in the in direction, because that's going to help keep your car stable on the exit of that hairpin. And I have it out at 0.05 just because, I mean, that's just a tiny amount of moving the front wheels outwards, just a tiny amount, just to give it a little extra rotation overall. So then moving on to the downforce, I wanted the downforce balance overall to be to where there's just, from the default settings, I made it, the default settings has it like the rear downforce is much higher than the front. I made it so that the front downforce is a little bit closer to the rear downforce, just so that when you raise the front downforce a lot, it's just, this is where I'm not going to really explain it very well. So to really oversimplify it, when you have more front downforce, it's going to make it have, it's going to have more rotation, it's going to have more oversteer, but it's going to, downforce is just so complicated to explain. I'm not an expert that can just very easily put that into words. Like, I'm thinking about what the physics is doing, but it's like, I mean, you don't want to make it too high, because then your car will not be fast enough on the straights and stuff. But, you know, and making the downforce higher can help you on cornering, which there's a lot on this track. But, you know, I found that as stable as this car is, you don't need excessive amounts of downforce, especially in the rear. So I've made it set the balances that, I mean, you can look at, I can't really move the downforce very much further to the left here when it's at 723 on the rear, and then 360 on the front. It's past the midway point and where you can adjust it there. So the balance of downforce is definitely heavier on the front here, and that's just overall giving me a much easier time maneuvering this specific track. It's just what I've noticed. So then moving on to the differential gears. So this, I've had it set to really low on the initial torque, because you really, I felt like it was way too high to where it was locking out when I would hit the throttle, and then when I would let go of the throttle, when I would lift, it would suddenly be able to steer a lot easier then. And you want it to where you can still steer while you're on throttle, because otherwise you're going to have to lift off the throttle too much during the race, and that's very bad. So I have it set all the way down to 6 on the initial torque. However, you do want it to be set still relatively high on acceleration sensitivity, because when you're exiting that hairpin and when you're exiting the chicane, you're having sudden acceleration. And that jolt of acceleration on the very low end torque there, you're still going to have some slipping and stuff. So having the acceleration sensitivity high does not make it to where you can't steer at all while you're on throttle at all, because that's where the initial torque, you can lower that, and then you will be able to still steer while you're on throttle. But the acceleration sensitivity comes in handy when you're just exiting those really tight turns like the chicane and the hairpin, because if I set that, I experimented on setting that really low, and it was very difficult to handle exiting those tight turns, and that's just going to get worse as tires wear more and more as the race goes on and your tires get more warm. Braking sensitivity, I have that set to 8. You really don't need much of that, and there's not much more to say about that. I mean, you just don't need it, so just set it really low to 8, or if you want, you can even set it lower. Just experiment with that if you want. If you're, you know, if you're slipping at all while braking, then you can maybe set it a little bit higher, but if you set this too high, then you will, you know, you'll have a little bit of understeer. So, like I said, I'm trying to overall make this a oversteer focused tune. So the final part of the tune here, the drivetrain. Now, this was very hard to get right on Suzuka. Suzuka is very specific in what gear you have to be in and at what time. And I think the most important parts of this was first and second gear had way too much torque, so I had to make those gears longer. Third gear, I also had to make it longer. These gears, I made it as long as I possibly can get, and the reason why I made first and second longer is just simply because I had too much torque. So that's pretty easy to explain. But third gear, the reason I made that one longer is because I want it to be close to red line when I'm about to enter into the S-curves part, that famous curvy part in Suzuka. You guys probably know what I'm talking about. It's near the beginning of the lap. You want to just stay in third gear, and you go in between, like punching it, partial throttle, coasting. You keep going, you know, where you need to go, but stay in third gear the whole time. And you shouldn't want to have to make a gear change that whole time, and you can just stay in third gear for the entirety of that whole curvy section. And so I made third gear as long as it can go as well because of that. And fourth gear, I made that a little bit shorter than all the way long, but it's still relatively long. Same thing with fifth gear. And then sixth gear, I made that pretty long just because on the end of the straights, I want to be able to get as much maximum speed as I can, but I didn't make it too long to where it won't really reach. So here is what I have set for the drivetrain and what has worked for me with endless experimentation this week, okay? First of all, okay, final gear, I have it set to 2.618, okay? Final gear is 2.618. First gear, 3.503. Second gear, 2.608. Third gear, 2.061. Fourth gear, 1.721. Fifth gear, 1.5. Sixth gear, 1.344. Now I'm about to show you guys this tune in action, and how I'm going to do that is I'm going to show 2 laps. I'm going to show the first lap on the default tune, not touched, and then I'm going to save the ghost of that lap that you guys will see me do here in a second. And then I'm going to load that ghost into a different lap where I'm going to have this tune you see here loaded in, and you're going to see just how much of a difference this makes. So stay tuned, and that's going to start right now. Okay, so to help demonstrate to you guys just how powerful a proper tune can be, I'm going to show you a before and after comparison where this lap you're about to see here is the default tune inside of the car. So on this lap you're about to see here, I have not touched any aspect of the tuning whatsoever, and this is the default setup right out of the box. First thing you can notice is that the gears are so long that I'm not even able to shift into 6th gear by the end of that straight. While going around these S-curves, you can definitely notice just how much understeer there is, as I have to sacrifice throttle input in order to still make the turns. Here's another section where too much understeer can become a problem. If the car was more loosened up, it would be able to go through these turns a lot faster, but it's too stiff. Listen to the downshifts as I go through this hairpin. Downshifting into first gear, it becomes very easy to make it bounce off the rev limiter very hard, as first gear is way too short and it needs to be lengthened. In order for me to stay relatively tight through this double apex, I have to significantly lift off the throttle. Despite that, I still am not able to stay as tight as I'd like, and my exit speed suffers as a result of this. By the end of this straight, I still don't make it into 6th gear, which means I have lots of room to shorten up the gears. Due to first gear being too short, it becomes very awkward around this chicane. Going over that curb, it disturbs the suspension too much and I almost lose control. Crossing the line with a 202.707. There are definitely improvements to be made from last lap, and so now I loaded in the proper tune to show you guys how much of a difference it makes, and I loaded in the ghost of the default tune lap I did before this, so as you can see me looking back sometimes, you can see just how far away I'm leaving the ghost behind with this proper tune loaded in. This time around, I'm able to reach 6th gear before the end of the straight. Coming in through these double apexes, I'm able to cut it really tight due to the car being loosened up. Notice how through these S-curves up here, I'm able to stay in 3rd gear with ease, and I have the perfect amount of acceleration and grip, and not too much understeer, and at the same time, not too much oversteer. My car's staying stable, yet accelerating very fast through all of these curves. Compare the downshift sounds of this lap to how the downshift sounded like from last lap. Notice how first gear is not giving me any issues of bouncing off the rev limiter when I downshift to. This is going to be crucial with tire wear, as if you bounce off the rev limiter very hard, it's going to murder your tires. Through these double apexes, I'm now able to cut it much tighter than last lap, and at the same time apply more throttle the whole way through. It's a win-win. Remember how on last lap, at the end of this straight, I was not able to reach 6th gear. However, on this lap, I am able to reach 6th gear, which shows that I'm taking full advantage of the entire gearbox. Due to first gear no longer being awkward, I'm able to go through the chicane a lot easier than last time. Also, with the compression and rebound being both higher, I don't have as much shock when I go over those curves. Crossing the finish line with a time of 1:58.981. That is a 3.7-second improvement from last lap. And there you have it, guys. This tune has been working tremendously well for me, but it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all when it comes to tuning. You tune a car depending on what fits your driving style the best. So feel free to use my tune, but if you need to tweak anything, go right ahead and tweak what works for you. That's it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe, as there's a lot more content on the way. If you like this video and if it helped you get better lap times, please click like to support the channel. Good luck in round number 2 of the Road to GT7 Championship Series, guys. I'll see you all on the track. Race fast, race clean. I'll see you all in the next video.